You've done some advocacy and some work around Cuban tobacco, and I've been hankering to ask you about. Paint us a quick picture of kind of Cuban tobacco in America pre and post embargo, and kind of your work around that. Given that you guys are really the last American standing here on that front.
So Cuba's a really interesting subject, and my family used a lot of Cuban tobacco from 1895 until the embargo was signed in 1962. And here in Tampa's 100 years ago is where the cigars were made, and Cuba is where the tobacco was grown for Tampa.
Okay.
100 years ago, more cigars were made with Cuban tobacco than in Cuba itself. And so there's always been a direct connection between Cuba and Cuban tobacco in Tampa in the United States.
So a quote unquote Cuban cigar pre-embargo did not mean it came from Cuba. It meant that the tobacco came from Cuba, but it could have been rolled anywhere.
And Tampa cigar factories used predominantly Cuban tobacco before the embargo. And then overnight, President Kennedy signed the embargo, banned us and everybody else from importing tobacco from Cuba, and sent the industry into a panic to try to find alternate sources of tobacco and change production. Today, we sell Brickhouse and our other cigars in about 80 countries around the world, and in all but the United States, they're on the same shelves as Cuban cigars.
Yeah.
And it's only here in the United States where our government says you cannot have a Cuban cigar, that they're not competing directly with them. My hope is the Cuban embargo will fall, and that we will be able to import raw tobacco from Cuba and roll it into cigars here in the United States, just like my grandfather and great-grandfather did 100 years ago. I think it's a great tradition that exists in the United States, and especially here in Tampa, and would love to bring it back. No one thought the Cuban embargo was going to last 6 months, or certainly not 6 years, and certainly not 60 years.
You're listening to the Burnt Offerings podcast.